The expression, you make all your money on the purchase of real estate, is extremely true. However, I've never heard it explained in an easy, contextual way or a deep dive of it. So what I'm going to do is break down all the various costs to make sense of the statement, all the money on your purchase. And the reason being is there's costs and fees which are silent killers in deals, which you may not feel it in the beginning, especially as a newbie. However, when you sell the deal to an end buyer at the end, you're gonna revisit your numbers, if you do, and say, oh, I paid this, I had to pay this. Oh, and then when I bought it, I had to pay these expenses. I'm gonna hopefully help preserve or prevent you from doing those type of mistakes that I've made. And there's several different costs to look at, as well as percentages to use in order to make sure deals work and they make sense. And when you see investors, especially seasoned ones, where they're firm on numbers, there's a reason why they're firm on numbers. They've run these specific algorithms to ensure that the numbers make sense, okay? Now we're gonna roll into all these different costs here and break down how these things come into play. All the money on the purchase, because you factored in these expenses or costs in order to make sure the numbers work and the purchase price is ironclad and it makes sense. Now, when you factor into your numbers, the first thing you must factor in is your acquisition cost, okay? Acquisition cost can be various things, which could be an assignment fee or a wholesale fee. It can be, if you're buying it from the MLS, you're going to be paying a realtor's commission. You could be paying closing costs as well. Those things could be, those are obviously expenses as well as a marketing expense. Now you have to be able to know clearly what the acquisition cost is on this purchase on the front end, okay? This is a cost some people don't tally, which I would highly suggest knowing these costs because they're very, very important. Okay. The next cost would be the actual, the cost overrun of the renovation portion of the job, okay? Let me write this down, cost overrun. Now what's cost overrun mean and how do you factor this into the percentage? I would say there's a renovation cost, which you come up with in the beginning. You'll walk the job with a contractor, and it's $50,000. There's a couple different approaches. The untechnical way, which I take, is a $5,000 oh shit extra fee, which is home inspections, miscellaneous things done on the back end of the sale. Remember, we're thinking about all the costs between the transaction on the front, transaction on the back. You can do $5,000 oh shit on top of your renovation cost or a percentage. People do 5%, 10%. I would do, personally, to keep numbers simple on the front end of buying it, a $5,000 overrun based on the repairs that you're going to pay for, okay? So there's a cost overrun, which is important in the parts of your numbers, okay? Then there's going to be a money cost, okay? Now, looking at the money cost, what does it cost you to make this thing happen? If it's strictly cash, there is no money cost. Well, there could be. It could cost you $10 to make a cashier's check. Is there a money cost? Another silent killer. Are you borrowing it from a lender? Are they charging you 2% on the money by borrowing it? And then are they charging you interest, 10%? Typically hard monies, lenders are 10 and 2. So 10% on the interest rate, 2% on the actual acquisition. Also, there could be appraisals that you have to pay for. This would be part of my thought of the money cost. So be aware there's a money cost associated with it. Another thing, which is the selling cost. Selling cost is where you have to pay real estate commissions, closing costs on this project, okay? Now, when you look at the selling cost, you have to factor those things in. To keep it simple, I would say 7% is going to be your selling cost. You have 7% here. Let's say your money cost is 2 and 10, or 10 and 2 they say. Cost overrun, we'll do a flat $5,000. And then we have the acquisition cost, which we will say is, we'll do a percentage, 5% is the acquisition cost, okay? The final step, which is the most important, is time/holding costs, okay? Holding cost expenses are taxes, insurance, the time on the interest of the money, okay? I'm not gonna get into all the details of the breakdown of it, but understand there's a holding cost. And the most important time of all this thing is time. How long will it take to get from point A to point B, which is selling the property, okay? Now, when time is money, it ultimately makes sense when you look at all the costs to buy this thing, all the costs to sell it, the renovation, all those things, comes back to the time. The amount of time it takes to all these costs fit in to the equation for you to then make a profit, okay? Now, when I look at all these numbers, I would also look into a percentage of the profit you want to make. Before I get into percentage, holding costs here, I would typically range it between 4 to 5 months, okay? Just doing the pure average on this thing, 4 to 5 months. Profit has to be, when you're running numbers on a flip, ARV, you must make between 10 to 15% of the ARV, okay? The ARV is $100,000, you must make $15,000 of the ARV to make sure it makes sense for your time based on all these things going on here. And this is just purely numbers on the board, okay? I will get into an example of this, but just to keep it simple, factoring into your numbers, these are this is the knife, okay? This is the knife that goes into the heart of your deal. And I'm not trying to be graphic, but all these costs and time must go into the equation. If you forget this, you're setting yourself up to fall right on the sword or put your head on the guillotine. I've been there before. These are the little details I'd say most flippers, especially new people, forget. They could forget 1 or 2, and most of the time, in my opinion, and even for me to do this video, it's a good refresher to say, you know what, I gotta be super tight on my numbers. When you hear the word, you make all the money on the buy or the purchase, it's people that are professionals who put these things into consideration of knowing it was a great purchase. Okay? In order to be a great purchase, remember, you're gonna have to go, it's a numbers game. There's gonna be several deals you have to underwrite, look at, to make sure all these things go into play. But I wanted to give you a quick snapshot of understanding the numbers, what goes into play in the numbers, and you can see how important these things are when you break down a deal.